Hello. Okay, so I'm saying things right now that is very important and you should listen very closely.
Okay, there we go.
If I'm talking about right here, does it change the volume?
Yeah, significantly.
Okay, so I gotta do like this.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, cool. Sweet.
It's my typical dynamic gotta eat the microphone thing.
Yeah. Yeah, one of these days I'm going to give you a mic grip. Okay, cool. I will be right back with you.
Sweet.
Thanks for listening to the Ask Noah Show. The phone lines are open, so give us a call right now at 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. And we'll take your question on the air when we go live in just a few moments. Thanks for listening to the Ask Noah Show. The phone lines are open, so give us a call right now at 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. And we'll take your question on the air when we go live in just a few moments. Thanks for listening to the Ask Noah Show. The phone lines are open, so give us a call right now at 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. And we'll take your question on the air when we go live in just a few moments. Thanks for listening to the Ask Noah Show. The phone lines are open, so give us a call right now at 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. And we'll take your question on the air when we go live in just a few moments. Thanks for listening to the Ask Noah Show. The phone lines are open, so give us a call right now at 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. And we'll take your question on the air when we go live in just a few moments. Thanks for listening to the Ask Noah Show. The phone lines are open, so give us a call right now at 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. And we'll take your question on the air when we go live in just a few moments. Thanks for listening to the Ask Noah Show. The phone lines are open, so give us a call right now at 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. And we'll take your question on the air when we go live in just a few moments. Thanks for listening to the Ask Noah Show. The phone lines are open, so give us a call right now at 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. And we'll take your question on the air when we go live in just a few moments. Thanks for listening to the Ask Noah Show. The phone lines are open, so give us a call right now at 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. And we'll take your question on the air when we go live in just a few moments. Thanks for listening to the Ask Noah Show. The phone lines are open, so give us a call right now at 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. And we'll take your question on the air when we go live in just a few moments. Here's what you'll hear on the Ask Noah Show.
I have managed to run my business since 2009 entirely on Linux. We are going to advocate for free and open source software on this program.
Hey Noah, man, spot on with your opening comments. I'd like to take the Windows box and turn it into a VM with all the programs and everything on it.
I know DVD Fab this year has released a version of multiple programs for Linux, and part of that does include Blu-ray. But I was curious what you do, if there's a better way, a different way of doing that.
I started Altispeed Technologies because I found out you could in fact leverage free and open source platforms to provide creative solutions that save money but didn't cost you any quality. There isn't a Mac or Windows PC here inside of the studio, and I give you my word, there never will be. I am eating my own dog food.
When you came as a guest speaker to one of my classes at the University of North Dakota, and you told me about Linux, and you told me about this community that exists to help each other and to empower themselves and empower everyone.
It just clicked with what you were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it took form. And so you came over to my house, and you switched us all over to Linux, and it made so much sense, and I felt like we were sandbagging the whole time.
My primary goal is to bring valuable content to my listeners and to help them learn technology. Now, if the byproduct of that happens to be a popular show, so be it. Does that answer your question?
It does definitely answer my question.
Okay, I want to sidebar with you for just a second. There's another piece of software that is really, really useful.
We are live from New York City. We are live here at Cincinnati Public Radio.
We are live from Linux Fest Northwest, and the energy here is awesome, guys. Hey, guys, the next episode of the Ask Noah Show is about to go live. Thanks for streaming us on the internet and being part of the show as it airs during our lifetime. We are so glad that you chose to spend your evening with us here on the air. If you haven't already, give me a call at 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. And I'll take your questions when we go live in just a few seconds.
Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Altispeed Technologies, the show that puts you, the listener, in the driver's seat because you are the content. The phone lines are open to be a part of the program. It's a free call. 1-855-450-NOAH. It's 1-855-450-6624. Give me a call. We'll have a conversation about your tech questions or business and tech questions. Linux advocate, above all else, small business owner, now host of the only radio show centered around you, the listener. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show. My name is Noah Chalayak. Good evening to you all. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a special edition of the Ask Noah Show. We're doing our War Stories episode, part 2. Now, a couple of weeks ago, a month ago rather, we did part 1, and it was a huge success. We got a lot of feedback from you guys. Everyone said, we really like the War Stories episode. We like hearing about the War Stories. We like hearing from other people in the IT technical field. So if that's you, we invite you to join us this Friday night on the Ask Noah Show. Give us a call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. And let us know your war story. Now, the war story was a very successful venture that we did the first time, and so we wanted we knew we were going to do it again, but the specific timing of this episode, because many of you are seeing this in your podcast player, many of you are sitting in the chat room or watching it live, and you're saying, I didn't really hear anything about, an Ask Noah Show War Stories episode. The last time we talked about it a couple of weeks, in advance, and this time we're kind of doing it really with 24 hours notice, not even 24 hours notice. And the reason is because something huge happened this week, and when it broke, we knew that we wanted to cover it on the Ask Noah show, and as the story got bigger and bigger, we knew that we couldn't actually wait for our live time on Tuesday. We had to cover it sooner. So this might be, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this might be a good week to sell some of your Intel stock and buy some AMD. That is, if you're the kind of person that, dabbles and gambles with single stock. I'm not. But from a technical perspective, if you're here for the TLDR, if you want to know what you need to know, the answer is pretty simple. It's simply just update your machine. And if you're not a special Windows user, then you have to wait till Tuesday, and then you can update your machine. Then your machine will be patched. Linux is, of course, already fixed. Many of you that listen to this program, you listen because you know that we at the Ask Noah show are going to do hours of meticulous research so that you don't have to. Then we're going to present that information to you with a perfectly executed analysis. And that's what I've been doing for the last couple days, is researching the heck out of this so that we could bring you this show. We're going to bring on industry expert Michael Tunnell from Tux Digital to give his take on this, and him and I are going to discuss this, go back and forth on it. But I want to start out by just walking you through as much detail as necessary for you to understand what this threat is, what's being done about this threat, and what the ramifications are. But if you're not interested in all of that, and you just want to know, what do I need to know? The answer is, patch your stuff, life will go on. Every computer needs an operating system. The operating system has to be able to communicate with the hardware. And every operating system has what's called a kernel to facilitate that. And the kernel is the brain, so to speak. And that's what's actually doing talking to the hardware. And then it talks to something we call userland. And userland is a thing that you are used to interacting with. It's your desktop. It's your processes. It's your applications, your files, etc., etc. And the kernel is what is doing all of the actual grunt work well beneath you. You don't know it's there, or you shouldn't know it's there, I guess. And the purpose behind that is when you want to save a file, you don't have to address the hard disk at a specific sector to write to. You just click File Save. And the userland talks to the kernel and finds the appropriate place to save and write that file to the hard disk. Now, computers use something called paging. And what paging essentially is memory allocation. It's a memory allocation technique that allows a physical address of space of a given process to be non-contiguous. So we call that physical space the frame. And so in English, what that means is a process can be allocated anywhere memory is available, and then we use something called the translation look-aside buffer, which is essentially a large table of all of the processes that maps those processes to their logical address in the correct physical frames. Now, in recent years, processors are constantly trying to be faster and more efficient. And one of the competitive ways that Intel has found to do that is with something called speculative execution. And speculative execution is basically the processor trying to predict and solve problems before it's actually called to do so. Now, if the prediction is right, then the CPU has done its job, and it's done its job a little bit faster, a little bit more efficiently. And if the prediction is wrong, then the answer is simply deleted. So there's no real penalty for a wrong guess. Now, when the CPU goes to predict data, it caches that data. And that data cache has no real security implementation behind it. Numerous research groups have brought that fact, that there is no security around this cache data, to Intel. And the reason that they brought it to Intel's attention is because Intel's, basically the way that their platform is structured, it prioritizes speculative execution. And so this is a fundamental failure in a feature, and that is what has been being exploited this week by both Meltdown and Spectro. We're going to dive into both of those in just a couple of minutes. And we have some links in the show notes. Sometimes I get some flack for people in the community or people I work with. They say, you don't put enough effort in the show notes. if sometimes you don't think the show notes are complete enough, this is your week, because there are more resources and links in the show notes. It's unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. So make sure to check out the show notes this week. All of the documentation, all of the articles that I did in preparation for this show are linked in the show notes. But we have an article there that specifically calls out Intel employees for selling a bunch of stock right before this security flaw came out, which is suspicious to say the least. So there are two real threats. The first is Meltdown. Meltdown applies only to Intel processors and basically allows an attacker to read kernel memory. Now, Apple has come out and said that this particular flaw has the most potential for exploitation within its ecosystem. Spectre, on the other hand, applies to Intel, AMD, and ARM, and Spectre, on the other hand, involves a pair of flaws that can allow access to a kernel memory available to applications running on a system. Now, unfortunately, Intel cannot just simply issue an update. Even a microcode update will not fix this problem, because it's more or less a physical issue. They have to actually physically modify code on the device, and so there's no economical fix for this. Now, they can fix processors that are coming out going forward, but unless we all send our processors back to them, there's really nothing we can do right now. And so what software companies, what the developers for Linux, what the developers over at Microsoft and Apple have done is they have come up with a band-aid. Well, really, Linux come up with a band-aid fix, and everyone else is trying to implement it. And it's a workaround for this particular vulnerability, and so we can't actually fix it. And I will get to the update that is going to fix this in Windows, but I want to talk about Linux first for a second. When Microsoft gets around to it, then that's really when you're going to get your Windows fix. But in Linux, the patch, which is already available, by the way, essentially splits userland and the kernel land. So we talked about how the kernel speaks directly to the hardware. Userland speaks directly to the upper layers of the operating system that you as a user interact with. Now, this will work, but many of you are probably thinking, no, if we separate userland and kernel land, doesn't that have a performance degradation? And I don't really have a great answer for you, and I've spent 3 days looking for one. The number that is being thrown around is 30%. So a lot of people are saying there's a 30% performance hit. However, I cannot find a single source of where they have come up with that 30%. Additionally, the more the story continues, the more I see reports that they're saying the average user won't see any noticeable performance degradation at all. And only high-performing machines are going to notice a difference. So the worst is going to be machines prior to Haswell 4th generation that do not have PCIe. The old processors that are more basic, those are supposedly the ones that are really going to feel the brunt of this. Newer processors, more powerful processors, specifically ones made after Haswell 4th gen, with PCIe will be less affected. Now, some of you are wondering about where AMD and Ryzen stands in all of this. At the moment, they claim that they are not affected by this bug because they do not engage in speculative execution with unsecured cache data. Additionally, they have a feature called the kernel page table isolation feature, which was put into place specifically to prevent this kind of bug from ever affecting their systems. Now, I read one report that said that they were slightly affected by this, but they could fix that small issue in software. Additionally, you had to have physical access to the machine to take advantage of that particular vulnerability, unlike the Intel bug. Now, if you're on the sieve of an operating system called Windows, then they took care of their Windows Insider customers, but you low-level peon with your unimportant data and your unimportant privacy, you can wait until Tuesday when we get around to it. So the update that Microsoft has released, is going to release a week later, is KB 405.4022. So make sure you have automatic updates enabled. So when Microsoft gets around to patching this critical vulnerability, you can update your system. But that is the basic rundown of what these Intel vulnerabilities are and what is going on with them. Now, joining me on the program, we have him on every time we want to get some really good insight into the technical perspective, somebody who is an industry expert, Mr. Michael Tunnell from Tux Digital. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I guess I want to start out by just saying, when you saw this, what was your original reaction? Was your hair on fire? Is the world coming to an end, or was it kind of like, we got a patch. We in the Linux world, at least we're fine.
Well, it was a jaw dropping situation because of the fact that it was a hardware specific problem. If it wasn't the hardware thing, that wouldn't have been as big of a deal. But once I started researching it more and more, it was definitely a jaw-dropping experience.
Yeah. So not only is it a serious bug, but I am awestruck that Microsoft is going to get around to this sometime next week.
Yes, sometime next week.
Well, they're waiting till Patch Tuesday.
To be fair, it was scheduled for that day. The release of this information was scheduled for Tuesday the 9th.
And it just fell through, or?
Well, the problem was that some people decided to go a little early. For example, Apple decided to put an update into 10.3. I think 3 again.
Mm-hmm.
Their December patch they did in like December 6th or so was included the update for this patch kernel patching. So that kind of it sort of started making people pay attention more to because it was an update that they didn't explain what it was. So when you started seeing stuff in the Linux kernel being updated that were not really specific about what was going on, people started digging in more. So because this, paying attention thing started, the information got out sooner.
Interesting. Did you see the one thing I saw that I thought was really cool? Did you see what Red Hat did? They opened up their resources for the vulnerabilities for the access.redhat.com. So the general public, you don't even need to sign up for an account. You can to take advantage of it. You can just head over there, and they open up all of the resources on things that you may need to know, things that you can do about it, and you can just access it right away.
I did not see that. That's pretty cool.
I think that's pretty neat. And the thing is, Red Hat is one of those companies where I feel like they're one of those companies that looks and say, we have to make a buck off of this stuff, and so some of this stuff we have to keep for ourselves and available to people that, have the account and, that we can account for and stuff like that. But then when something like really serious happens, they're okay to step up and say, you know what, we're going to give it to you because you need it.
Yeah, that's a really good approach to it because it is a significant problem that needs to be addressed. So the fact that they're not focusing on how much money can you get, they're more focusing on how can we help as many people as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, it's absolutely fantastic. Again, phone number 1-855-450-NOAA, 1-855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. If you want to make your voice heard, become a part of the program. We're going to pause here for just one quick second. We have an audio issue, and the last time I went through an entire program with this, it totally bit me. So I'm not going to let that happen this time. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back with you. Okay, is there anyone there that can confirm that the lower pitched audio thing is now resolved? If somebody's in the chat room could let me know, that would be great. All right. So looks like it might be solved. Is that the understanding I have? Okay, sounds like it's solved. So we'll go back to Michael. Again, 1-855-450-NOAA, 1-855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. Give us a call, make your voice heard, become a part of the program. If you have war stories, we'd love to hear it. Michael from Tux Digital and I are talking about these Intel vulnerabilities and what they mean and what you need to know about them. So thanks again for being here, Michael. Now, another thing I wanted to get your take on was, did you see Linus's response to all of this?
I saw that he said there's going to be an extra RC because of it.
Yeah, so they're really, and that's another thing too. Linux has been right on top of this stuff. If you're on Linux, it was fixed before they ever really even announced that there was a problem. And Linus himself actually submitted code to fix this. So that this is I think that speaks volumes to Linux. Yeah. So but I guess so. One of the things that he says is that he is calling for this speculative indirect call thing to be totally eliminated. So I have his response here. He says, any speculative indirect calls in the kernel can be tricked to execute kernel code, which may allow side channel attacks that can leak arbitrary kernel data. Why is all of this done without any configuration options? A competent CPU engineer, see, this is how you know it's actually Linus that wrote this. A competent CPU engineer would fix this by making sure speculation doesn't happen across protection domains. Maybe even a L1 that is keyed by CPL. I think that somebody inside of Intel really needs to take a long, hard look at their CPUs and actually admit that they have issues instead of writing PR blurbs that say everything is working as designed. And that really means that all of these mitigation patches should be written, not all CPUs are crap in mind. Or is Intel basically saying we are committed to selling you crap forever and ever and never fixing anything? Because if that's the case, maybe we should start looking towards the ARM64 people more. Please talk to management because I really see exactly two possibilities. A, Intel never intends to fix anything, or B, these workarounds should have a way to disable them. So which of the two is it? That's what Linus, and the thing is, when he's such a direct person and he catches so much crap for that on the internet, but I appreciate that kind of, I really appreciate that kind of honesty and straightforwardness.
And in fact, in this particular case, it's quite necessary.
It is, because they're not taking it seriously enough. And part of the issue is, and this really frustrates the heck out of me, and I know it frustrates other people that deal with this on a daily basis. One of the things that is really irritating to us is when you have these large companies that when they hear about a problem, the first thing they think of is how do we avoid litigation and how do we avoid the PR nightmare? Everything else, up to and including people's actual system, the actual problem, everything else, that takes a second seat to PR problems and legal problems. And I understand, I mean, you own a business, I own a business, both of us understand why they have to take that stance and why they do the things that they do, but it's still so frustrating.
Yeah, the response that Intel gave was very dismissive, and in some cases they even kind of said, hey, it's not just us, don't blame just us. And that's somewhat true. Even with the meltdown in effect, there's actually a particular ARM processor that is affected by it, but it's not even like fully released yet. So technically, everybody who has access to this wouldn't be affected by it. So like they're going into like fixing that particular processor so it doesn't have the problem when it does become full mass production. So that like they're just trying to like point, just don't look at us. Don't pay attention to the fact that our CEO sold stock and when he knew that there was a problem. Let's pretend that everybody is at fault and not just focus on us. When it's definitely Intel is a very big aspect to it, especially when Intel is like one of the main processor is basically the main processor company in the enterprise and server world.
Yeah, and for a long time, Intel has been their own worst competition. Like the thing that Intel has to compete against most is their previous generation processor. And what's interesting is the timing of all of this, because it was just 6 or 7 months ago we started to talk about Ryzen and how Ryzen was, coming to fruition and how Ryzen had some really competitive advantages. Last week at the end of the program, we talked with a listener named Charlie who gave us his take on why AMD Ryzen is a better choice for some people that want to do open source type things. And I guess I have to ask the question, if that's the case, when we start looking at stuff like this and all of a sudden we have these huge flaws, why aren't we taking more of a look and why aren't we putting more effort into making sure that Ryzen and AMD is competitive in the marketplace?
Well, I think it's because, and as far as the Linux world, it's because AMD's had a long history of ignoring Linux. And now that it's basically been like 2 years since they started to say that, hey, we're coming back to the Linux market, pay attention to us. But because they ignored it for so long, there was such a huge gap that Intel created such a huge market share that it just kind of felt like, okay, you say this now, but you also said this before when we're talking about like Mantle and APIs like that. Which, I mean, Mantle did eventually become Vulkan, which is great, but like it's just they say things sometimes that you kind of are a little sketchy about it. So maybe it still has that kind of a stigma around their reputation. But based on like their hardware like benchmarks and stuff, it's quite good, and they've proven themselves about keeping to their word. Like they recently open sourced the Vulkan drivers just a couple weeks ago.
Do you think that this vulnerability and this entire situation changes the way that we have to start looking at things like ARM? Do you think that that's going to take, because the interesting thing about ARM is it practically doubles in power every other year. And now it's beginning to get to the point where you're seeing a lot of competitive products that can compete where Intel used to. So you're seeing ARM laptops, you're seeing ARM desktops. Is that something that you think that is a more credible threat now to Intel?
I think ARM has a threat, but I think AMD is the bigger threat because AMD can offer much more power and at a cheaper cost in some cases. And the ARM situation is more like the architecture of ARM is a little complicated in the sense of compatibility. So you could make an ARM device, and when you have something made for that particular device, it doesn't mean that the software could be put on any other device. So like, for example, that's why our Android phones have different ROM capabilities. So if you want to put Lineage OS on one device, you have to have them make it for that device. So the ARM has that compatibility issue that might limit its growth.
Right. Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. Have you heard of anything or seen anything regarding Ryzen laptops?
I've seen them talking about them as far as like as a concept, but I haven't seen any kind of like any benchmarkings or stuff or like that. But based on the way they've structured the Ryzen's CPU, it wouldn't be that much of a hassle to switch it over to laptops as well, because they're focusing them on like a low end cost building, so it should be available to be put into laptops as well for the pricing's point.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, do you want to take a call with me?
Absolutely.
Sweet. Architect is calling from Texas. Hey, Architect, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hello again, Noah, and hi, I guess, Michael.
Yeah.
Hi for the first time.
Yeah, so I guess most relevant is earlier today I got to play around with the Spectre proof of concept on 3 different systems at work.
Oh, really? Tell me about that. So you've actually done this vulnerability then?
Yeah, the Spectre one, not Meltdown.
Sure.
But they're all Intel CPUs at work anyway, so both of them should have worked just the same. So I'm regularly connected to a hardened BSD VPS install. My primary workstation is Dragonfly BSD, and then there's that CentOS box that was giving me a lot of grief that I thought would be fun to run this vulnerability on. All 3 of them have been up to date, and Dragonfly actually got a meltdown mitigation in place, just to put that out there.
Okay.
But yeah, I built this really simple C file that essentially acted as GDB or LLDB on running processes. It was kind of freaky seeing it, because it printed out the pointer to the address location, the value, and how sure it was that it had a good
allocation. So what was your thought when you actually ran this thing all the way through, and it's like, okay, I have exploited this thing? What was your thought? Was your thought man, this is a big problem. This is a huge problem, or was it like, we got a patch, it'll be all right?
Well, Spectre's not being patched. Spectre's the much more insidious one.
So hold on a second. No, hold on a second. You got to help me with this, and maybe Michael, maybe you can chime in here too. My understanding was that both Spectre and Meltdown both relied on the fact that there was this unsecured cache data. So if they are now separating the user land from the kernel level, so it's no longer caching that data, then wouldn't that prevent both of those attacks from happening, or that understanding is incorrect?
Because the issue is that the The Meltdown vulnerability is they work in the same way. Spectre and Meltdown work in a very similar way. They're just different variants of the same method, except that the Meltdown is the variant 3 method, which is the attack on the kernel. So the kernel fix is a kernel level cache fix. So the page isolation or page table isolation is fixing Meltdown. So anytime like any system that can be affected by Meltdown, this would solve it. But it doesn't affect Spectre because Spectre doesn't affect the kernel.
I see.
That has to be done in other applications. Like, for example, Mozilla announced that Firefox has an update that has a fix for the Spectre issue.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's being handled. So the Spectre is being
timing fix for JavaScript.
So the Spectre update that's being handled inside of software. That's being fixed inside of software.
No, it's being mitigated as best as it can.
Well, yeah, of course. All of these are Band-Aids.
A very long time to. Well,
yeah, everything's
in particular is taking well, both of them are leveraging timing attacks against the CPU cache with the branch prediction and out-of-order instructions. So the CPU will actually try to predict what code needs to be executed and get that information cached as a way to speed up, regular processing. But if that code is never needed or isn't cleared immediately, then you can actually read that cache back and effectively keep changing the addresses that the cache is pre-executing and dump the entire system's RAM contents.
Jeez.
Exactly how that's being done is what varies between Meltdown and Spectre.
Yeah.
Meltdown being the one that's specific to Intel, which is the user and kernel data not being protected correctly.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Michael. What were you saying?
I was saying Intel's affected by all of them. All 3 variants are affecting Intel machines. So, like, if you have Meltdown fix, you don't have Spectre.
Vulnerability to Intel. Spectre is, as far as we can tell, impacting all CPU designs that use this branch prediction and out-of-order instruction technique, except for RISC-V and I think it was Itanium and the earlier Atom CPUs weren't. I haven't verified yet, but those were specifically Meltdown in the end. So we have some really big problems, and right now the big patch is for Meltdown.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Sorry, go ahead.
So what Spectre was doing is allowing you to basically debug memory as a process is running. And that's more difficult to implement, so it's a little bit less of an issue, but the whole reason why Firefox is changing the JavaScript timings is because there are proof of concepts already out there where a JavaScript thread in a Chrome tab can read the memory of the entire Chrome process.
Okay, now let me ask you this. Is there, Michael or Architect, either one of you, going forward, as Intel actually sets up all these new processors and they know the fix and they have physical access to the new devices that they're manufacturing, this problem won't exist going forward. That's my understanding, right?
Correct. If they fixed it in the hardware itself, it wouldn't be a problem.
And that's your understanding too, Architect? Okay.
Yeah, both of these bugs need to be fixed in hardware.
Yeah, and so
software mitigations can only do so much.
Right, and so obviously the problem is that it's just not feasible to have everyone replace their CPU or pull their CPU out, put it in a UPS box, and ship it back to Intel to get updated. That's just not practical.
Right, and they probably wouldn't even do that anyway.
Yeah. Well,
Well, anyway, thank you, Architect, for calling in and sharing your experience with us. I appreciate it, especially, this is what I love about the Ask Noah community is because, we go to do an episode and it's relatively short order, and we still manage to come across somebody who has real life experience, somebody who's doing this, the people that are digging down in the actual code. And I'm not a kernel architect, and I don't play one, or CPU architect, and I don't play one on TV. And so it's really great to have people that are super knowledgeable about this stuff, like Architect, like Michael. And we can present the best information to you. Again, the phone number, 1-855-450-NOAH, 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. We're taking your war stories this hour, or if you have comments or questions about this latest Intel vulnerability, we'd love to hear from you. Michael Tunnell from Tux Digital is guest hosting with us this hour. Happy to have him as well. So, Michael, I heard a funny explanation of this. So if you're sitting down with your relatives and you're saying, I heard, Grandpa saying, I heard that they got some sort of vulnerability there on the on a computer. So what exactly does this do? Here, the explanation that you're supposed to give. Have you seen this?
No, that was a good impression.
Yeah, that's a good impression of Grandpa. The explanation is, so you tell the non-technical person, you know how we finish each other's and then let the other person interrupt and say sandwiches. You say, no, sentences, but you guess sandwiches, which was in your mind for an instant, and if that was a password, somebody just stole it. Isn't that good? I thought that was funny. I thought that was clever. I don't know who came up with that, but I think it's funny. 1-855-450-6624. We got another caller coming in here, so we'll give him a second to get. We'll give Simon Quigley's filling in as call screener tonight. It's a huge help to have people that are willing to step up and fill in when our ordinary people can't be here, and oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, you know what? The other thing is too is I just got a message that our friend Architect that we were just speaking with, he actually is running BusyBox and got a new toy. So we're going to bring him back up. Hey, Architect, welcome back to the program.
Hey, and it's actually not BusyBox. I'm more of a permissive license guy, so I went with Toybox.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, tell me about it.
Well, it's the same idea as BusyBox, but BSD licensed, and the fun part regarding it is that it happens to break Draka when you swap it out for the new core utils.
Oh, cool.
Apparently some of the flags aren't implemented, similar to like if you're using GNU grep versus BSD grep.
Sure. So let me ask you this, just kind of a side question for you. I have always, my understanding of BusyBox, licensing aside, was that it was like this commercial thing that you had to go purchase. You can't just download BusyBox, but if you purchase it, then it's like this embedded version of Linux that you can use on a bunch of things. And so like the Ubiquiti, Unify, AP, UAC Pros and stuff like that, they all have BusyBox. That's the actual Linux operating system that's running on them. Is that understanding correct? And if it is correct, is that one of the reasons that you chose to go with the BSD alternative, other than the permissive license?
Well, the main use for BusyBox and Toybox is that they're multi-call binaries, so it's a single statically linked, usually binary that's extremely small, and you just have symlinks or hard links to things like ls, grep, sed, via your usual base utilities.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it behaves like whatever program you called it.
Cool.
So if you invoke it with the BinSH hard link, then it behaves like the Bourne or the Almquist shell.
Sure. Makes sense.
And the main goal there is primarily size.
Okay.
They're very small, they're very fast, and they're fully functional alternatives to the GNU bin utilities package. They're just less big.
Yeah, well, less big, and like you said, it has a more permissive license, and that's one of those things that I never really know where to come down on that, because on one hand, I like the idea of maximum absence of coercion, more freedom. I like that idea, but at the same time, I feel like when you get into these highly permissive licenses, the other problem you run into is you get people that say, all right, I'm going to take what everyone else has done, and I have no real incentive to give back because the license doesn't require me to. What do you think, Michael?
Oh, as far as licensing goes, I think that the permissive license as a concept is great, but then you have a situation where anyone can take your code, and not only can they take your code, they can take it, rebrand it, never do anything, and pretend it is theirs and make money.
Right.
As long as they put the code out there in some random place that is like some obscure place on their website, as long as it's technically available, it's okay.
But some of those like BSD licenses, they don't even require you to publish the code.
That's true, and some BSD licenses and even the MIT license doesn't technically require you to do anything.
Right. Yeah, the MIT license is actually that's kind of what I was referring to. Is they're like, when they say permissive, they mean like we don't. It's like it's like the opposite of copyright. Like I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, Joel's calling.
Like here, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, basically, Joel's calling. Hey, Joel, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
How's it going, Noah? How's it going, Michael?
Excellent.
Hello.
How can we help?
Yeah. So first of all, about these two bugs with CPUs. Do we know if the Intel management engine had some significant part in these bugs at all, or anything like that?
I haven't heard anything, Michael.
It's not specific to the management engine. No. There's some
with all
sort of connections where you can use the management engine in conjunction, but it's not affected by the management engine. Doesn't create this problem.
Okay, and also just to lighten the mood a little bit, and with this big event coming up next week, is there anything that's going to be exciting that you're excited about during CES?
Man, I would love to go to CES one of these years. This year, here's my event schedule. Let me look. This year we are doing NAB. We're doing an Ubuntu thing at the end of January, beginning of February. We're doing Linux Fest Northwest, obviously Scale, obviously Self. CES just doesn't fit in there this year, but I would love to. I think that would be really fun. The thing I think that would be frustrating about CES, and Michael would correct me if I'm wrong here, you'd see a bunch of toys that would never actually come to fruition, and you'd keep saying, I saw it, I know that thing exists.
Yeah, for the most part, it's proof of concept stuff.
Yeah, that's true. And some of the stuff actually takes years to come out and all that, although we've been seeing a lot of protocols over there as well, such as like 4K and all that, and the new, I know H.265 was featured over there first or something. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, quite a few years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of that.
Pretty much everything happens. Like, it either becomes vaporware or it becomes eventually eventualware. I'm not sure if there's.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, I appreciate the call, Joel. Someday, if I ever make it to CES, I'll let you know. Maybe we'll do a live Ask Noah show from CES. It would be fun. I like it. Again, if I had my choice, I'd go to every conference that involves technology all year round, except I'd skip the Microsoft and Apple one because nobody cares. But yeah, right. But no. I would love it. I would love to head up CES. I'd love to play with all the toys. Again, phone number 1-855-450-NOAH, 1-855-450-6624. Again, the email live at AskNoahShow.com. We're talking about the Intel bug, as well as some other things we're going to get to. I want to go talk, and Michael, maybe get your take on some of this. Back at our Christmas episode, we talked about an issue regarding some Lenovo and Acer BIOSes that had become read-only after installing Ubuntu 17.10. Now, this was due to an improper implementation of the Intel SPI driver on Intel's part. My understanding was there was nothing that Canonical could have done differently. But I'm happy to report today that the bug has been solved, more or less. 17.10 respins are scheduled to be completed and released on Thursday, January 11th. As of right now, if you're running an earlier version of Ubuntu, like 16.04, 16.10, 17.04, you can upgrade to 17.10 with no problems. Now, if you're one of the people whose BIOS was affected, then there are some steps that you do need to take. Now, my understanding is that this assumes that you can actually boot into Ubuntu to begin with, which wasn't always the case, because if you remember, the problem with this particular bug was it nerfed your BIOS so that you could write changes to it. So let's say the default boot order was nothing. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it was booting the Windows Boot Manager, and that was it. Well, you couldn't install Windows because you couldn't get it to boot off of the USB drive. You couldn't boot your existing Ubuntu installation because you couldn't change the boot, or you couldn't save the changes that you made to the boot order. And you could not boot Windows because maybe Windows wasn't on there. So it was a real conundrum for some people. But if you can boot into Ubuntu, what you do is you download a deb, which we'll have linked here in the show notes. You install the downloaded package, make sure the kernel is installed without any error, and then you reboot. Now at Grub, you're going to choose the newly installed kernel, and you can choose recovery mode. Reboot and go into your BIOS and confirm that your BIOS is now writable. In the event that your BIOS is not writable, you can reboot back into the new kernel, reboot again into the new kernel. That's twice. And this time you're not going to enter the BIOS settings, but before the reboot, on the second reboot, you're going to check the BIOS. And if your BIOS still remains an issue, it still hasn't solved it, we have another, well, it's not we, I have nothing to do with it, we're just reporting it, but you can download another kernel, which again, we'll have linked in the show notes, and use dpackage to install it, and then repeat steps 4 through 6, and we'll have all of these steps in the show notes. Now, after your BIOS is fixed, then you can remove the special kernel with sudo dpackage tacar to remove that kernel, the custom kernel that you installed. So, Michael, I assume you don't have any Lenovo or Acer computers that were affected by this.
I do not, no.
What was your thought when this came out? I mean, this was one of those things where I was like, oh man, I have to go on the air and talk about that.
Yeah, when I had to talk about it in my show when I was the first topic on my show a couple weeks ago was this, and it was just like, so here's what happened.
Yeah,
and yeah, it's not a fun time.
No, it's really not. I mean, there's nothing. Yeah, it was no good. But it looks like it's fixed now. I have some information here. Well, actually, I guess I went over all of it. But yeah, but no. So I guess as of now, we're good to go. Going forward, we're okay. And you know what I said on that Christmas episode, and I'm not proud of it. But it's the reality we live in, is that if you run a non-LTS, you are the testing bed. You are the person that is testing to make sure that Canonical's LTS customers don't get burned. And
even Canonical has said that.
Yeah, the problem
is how they represent it.
The problem, I have two problems with it. First and foremost, the problem is that just seems like an unacceptable cost or risk that your computer. I mean, there are legitimately people's computers that Canonical has said, there is no fix for this. Basically, you have to replace your motherboard or send your BIOS chip in to be reflashed, which is just not a possibility for most people. So the cost of a computer, bricking your computer, that seems like a too high of a cost to me.
I agree, but that's a situation where they had no control over it.
No control. And what could they have done differently? But it
absolutely nothing, because they didn't have to do it. They didn't even have control over the code that was implementing it.
So right.
So that they had no way to know that this was going to happen, and they had no way to mitigate it prior to it happening.
Right, and it's not like Intel works with them and says, here's how we're going to incorrectly implement this SPI thing, and so make sure to compensate for it. Like, it's just not possible. And really, that I didn't dig into it because it doesn't really matter for the purpose of our show. But here's the thing: the truth is that this SPI thing, this is a Band-Aid. This is not a fix. There's a kernel flag that is just disabling the Intel SPI driver.
Yes,
that's
exactly what it's doing. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're not fixing anything. Again, we're just band-aiding it. So, what adds insult to injury, Michael, and this is the one and only release ever in certainly in my history with Altispeed Technologies, but even more so being as an on-air personality talking about this, where I've gone on and said, you know what? Install 1710. I mean, we started installing 1710 for customers at our shop, and we've never done that since 2009. We've always stuck with the LTS. And it was just this particular time, we knew that they were changing desktop environments, and there was so much push behind GNOME, and it just seemed like the right thing to do, and it turned out to be a huge mistake.
Yeah, that's a situation where you really can't give them 1604 because the next LTS is going to be entirely different. So
right.
How do you mitigate that, and how do you create a more reasonable transition period?
Right.
And then you only have one option for that, and that particular option turns out to be not a very good option depending on the hardware.
Yeah, and so to clarify, because you're right, to your point, yeah, you're right. We didn't upgrade people that were already on 1604. It's just new machines that we were going to send out with people. We weren't going to put them on a desktop environment that we knew was deprecated. So, it was a mistake on my part. And luckily, none of our clients got burned by this particular thing, and it doesn't look like it's going to be an issue. But I'm still running 1710, and I'm going to continue to run 1710. And when 1804 ships, every computer I own will get upgraded to it, up to and including some of the ones that are running Arch, because I'm feeling the drive to go back to Ubuntu. But it seems like it was a really crappy time. And the other good thing is, to me, is that I feel like it's really exciting that we don't have these kind of like major critical issues very often. So, and I referenced a couple of this, the blue screen of death repeat thing that Microsoft had, and the root login thing that Apple had. So it's not like we're alone in catastrophic failures in the operating system.
Right.
But it kind of sucked.
Yeah, but this is a situation where, you can't really think of anything that's this bad in a situation of Linux experience. Like the Linux distributions don't necessarily have these, even with Heartbleed and Shell Shock, they weren't even that bad because
right.
they were easily fixed. You just update your system and you're good to go. Nothing broke.
Yeah.
This particular time is like these two back to back are both like potential hardware problems, and that's a little scary in the short range of when they came out. But there's a good thing about the BIOS problem is that there are some particular examples where the BIOS can be fixed. There's a situation where you can also 100% brick it and it has to be replaced, but they've done some tests to found that if you execute certain types of code in a certain sequence, you can get the BIOS back.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, so it is depending on how severe the effect was, because not everybody has the same result. It's not everybody gets their BIOS bricked.
Right.
It's some get it to like completely bricked, and some just get partial booting problems, and you can fix those. So like some of these, like the silver lining is that there is a possibility that some BIOS affected machines can be fixed and improved and upgraded. So that's that at least it's not the entire hardware itself has a flaw in it.
The other thing that stands out to me is different from Heartbleed and all that from this BIOS issue is that, with the Heartbleed stuff, that is primarily targeted, the responsibility fell to system administrators. So you had companies really that had full-time system administrators that were fixing this stuff, for the large majority of people. The thing with this BIOS thing is it becomes incumbent on the people who maybe have installed Linux for the very first time on their hardware, and now they don't even have a second computer that they can use to troubleshoot the first one. So,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was really kind of a burn. Hey, speaking of laptops, if you didn't want to get burned by this Intel problem, what you could have done is purchased a computer specifically designed to run Linux. I was checking out this article from omgubuntu.co.uk, and we'll have it linked in the show notes. The new Dell XPS 13 Developer Edition 2018 is, I don't know if it's actually available for purchase. I kind of doubt it, but they have a write-up on it. And they've got some really slick pictures. Have you seen this machine?
The XPS 13, yeah, it's like super thin.
Dude, it's kind crazy.
Surprisingly thin.
It is. It's surprisingly thin. So the last one, the 2017 version or 16, I don't remember, whatever the last one that JB got to play with, that was thin enough. And Chris was talking about how you could stick it in between the couch cushions. It's such a small computer. Well, the 2018 version, thinner and lighter yet, thinner bezels yet. Now, they do have this idiotic rose gold looking thing, and then this like white thing. I look so tacky. It's not for me. But the other, like the developer machine with like the black matte rubberized keyboard thing, man, is that a slick looking machine. A really hot looking laptop. And specs are fantastic. 4K display, still tops out at 16 gigs of RAM. I would really like to see higher than 16 gigs, especially with all the crap that we give the MacBook guys. it seems like that would have been a really awesome opportunity to best them. But really good looking machine, man. If you're looking for a computer in 2017, 2018, and you want a no compromise Linux experience, that XPS, and USB-C. Do you have a machine with USB-C yet?
Unfortunately, no.
So I am living the USB-C lifestyle. I've got a USB-C adapter that I've installed to my bed. So there's just a cord. I'm not kidding. There's a cord that hangs out just behind my headboard. So when I'm in bed at night, if my laptop dies, I can just reach down, grab the cord, and plug it in. It charges there. I've got a USB-C charger in my computer bag. I've got one here at the studio. And man, is that something where you can sit down at a desk, and like right now, I had my laptop plugged in when I got into the studio when I was setting up. Once I got set up, then I decided I was going to go on air and I wanted to plug my phone and let my phone charge. I unplugged the same cable that's charging my laptop and plug it into my Pixel, and now my phone is charging. And it's funny too. Like, I feel like Apple really screwed the pooch by shipping the iPhone X, iPhone X10, iPhone XS, iPhone whatever, the iPhone with no headphone jack and no fingerprint reader. That one, it screwed the pooch by shipping that with Lightning. Like, I can charge my laptop, my phone with the same cord, and they shipped all USB-C on the MacBook, and then didn't do that with the phone.
Oh yeah, because you need more dongles, because that's how they make money at this point.
Right, dongles. But like, and the world is going to turn into USB-C world. So at least you can say with like the MacBook, like, maybe it'll be outdated by the time we get there, but 5, 7, 10 years down the road, you won't have dongles. Everything will just be USB-C, and you still won't be able to charge your iPhone with it.
Well, maybe they'll they make a new one every year, so maybe in like 3 years they'll be forced to use USB-C, or maybe they'll be forced to get rid of that stupid notch at the top.
Yeah, well, I think they're probably. I think their big push is wireless, right?
There's some wireless issues, but they're going to do some. They're doing this face recognition stuff more, like they've removed a lot of the touch features, so it's going to be like all sensor based.
Yeah, and did you see how that's working out for them? Apparently, there's some huge security flaws with that too.
Yes, and they've also they've even have reports where some of the face sensor, the face recognition sensors are being limited in how powerful they are, so that they're more accurate, which removes the accuracy actually. Yeah.
Hey, we got another call here. I want to. We got a couple minutes, but we have enough time to put him on. A guy I'm really excited to talk to. Actually, I've spoken a little bit to him in and outside of the chat, but he's joining us for the first time on the program. Mr. SpongeBob, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hi, Noah. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yes, sir. Welcome. How can we help?
So, Noah, my question was, regarding these mitigations and patches that are in the works for Meltdown and, to some extent for Spectre. Are they really required? So just for some background, I basically work in an enterprise IT shop. Are they really required if you have an in-house system, which is running not on the cloud, not on a shared infrastructure, but running in-house, and it just runs one major application and its components? So my thinking was, if the attack vector is purely requires someone to actually run code on that box specifically,
it doesn't.
Is it then really required? Sorry?
It doesn't require physical access.
He said run code on the machine, right? So is the box connected to the internet?
No, it's not. It's entirely within the data center. It's not publicly exposed in any way. It's only connected to other internal systems.
Yeah, I'll let Michael give his take on this too. But my thought is, if it's truly segregated from the internet and you're controlling physical access to it, I'm going to go ahead and say it's not critical to patch that. Michael, do you agree or disagree?
I would agree, but I have one question: is how connected to the internet is the other if you said it's on an internet, are any of those computers connected to it also connected to the internet? Or is it a full isolation situation? Okay, so there is possibility that there could be some network jumping in that case at the absolute worst level of you could dump full writes of the kernel memory at the absolute worst, but that'd be very unlikely. Sure. I'm just saying it's technically possible, but as far as the risk for that particular situation, it's very low.
Here's my question: what would be the downside to patching the machine? Is it like a machine that is heavily performant, so you really want to squeeze out every last bit of performance out of it?
Yes, there are two things. One is the performance aspect that you mentioned, and the other aspect is, within the estate, obviously there are upwards of 1,000 machines that need to be patched. So, we need to prioritize and decide on which ones need to get to be done first.
Sure, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Well, does that adequately answer your question then?
Yes, and thank you so much, Noah, for great to speak to you after so long.
Yeah, it's been a little bit, and again, this is a guy that him and I have talked, on and off inside of the Telegram chat. And if you want to chat with us on Telegram, telegram.asknoahshow.com, and you can hang out with us, and we have an ongoing chat. And actually, that's where the entire inception of this episode came from. We went from the Telegram Ask Noah chat. We just started talking to people. Said, hey, would anyone be interested in a War Stories episode? And if so, would anyone make it? And then everyone, some people said, yeah, I might be able to make it. But everyone was like, no, we really think that the Ask Noah show has to cover this Intel thing. And so Michael offered to come on and help us with it, and so couldn't turn that down. So Michael, we got a couple minutes left in the program. What are you up to? What is Tux Digital up to these days?
Well, I'm doing my podcast for This Week in Linux, where it's a weekly news podcast that just talks about various different news items throughout the week and exclusively on Linux topics. I'm also doing a lot more content-wise overall, as far as like new tutorials and conceptual explanation for different types of things. Like, for example, like the best example right now I have is a Linux Explained series, where I explained like Ubuntu Snappy and how it all works and how the snaps work together and things like that. So trying to make complicated topics a little more digestible.
Yeah, so I talked about that the other week. I was just saying that sometimes you find these things that they're not easily understood just by reading, because you bounce from article to article and you get a bunch of different information. And one of the things that I think you've done really well is you've taken that stuff and you've condensed it down, like your Snappy video in particular. I think you can get through that. It's like, what, 2 minutes? And you can understand everything you need to know about Ubuntu Snappy and Snappy Core and what the difference is and all that.
Yeah, for the first 2 minutes of the video, just takes the basics of like how it works and what it is, and then I go into like the frequently asked questions about Snappy. So I collected as many frequently asked questions around the community to then cover all of those to give like more in depth to that content as well. But like the first couple minutes is the explanation.
Perfect. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the program. We appreciate having you.
Hey, I appreciate having me as well. But there's one more thing I want to point out, that for the Meltdown and Spectre thing, good news is that the Raspberry Pis, all of them, are not affected by Spectre or Meltdown.
Absolutely outstanding. That's a good note to end on right there. So we do have some positive role or positive thing in the Linux space. If you're running a Raspberry Pi, you're set. Hey, huge thanks to Voxtelesys for providing our phone system, Ben, our producer, Rakai, our video editor. I have no idea what's coming up next because it's a special edition, but we'll see you on Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central. Okay, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Here's what I want to do, if it's okay with you. I want to go back to where that audio cut out, and I just want to redo that intro with you, because here's the advantage I have going for me tonight. I didn't have this opportunity last time because I wasn't actually in the studio, and two, I was on the FM radio, so I had 1 hour and that was it. But tonight we're not on the air. I'm just on this is just a JB thing. So
okay,
I can spend as much time as I want going back and redoing this stuff. The only thing I want to try and do is, if I can cut it to exactly at the right, if I can get the timing on all that stuff down right, then the radio station can re-air this at some point. But I want to try and redo that intro with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can set this up. Let's see here.
I hope I don't have to remember what I said.
No, it doesn't matter as long as.
Okay.
I just got to figure out. I got to figure out where it cut out. And Here's the gap. So, and I was smart enough to leave myself a little bit of an intro where I was like, I think I started with the phone number. I get it. Let me get a pair of headphones real quick. I don't want to just leave with like nothing on. Do I have some music I can play or something? I don't think there's any.
No, man, I don't care. If it's
yeah,
not
you don't care.
It
It just seems tacky to be streaming. Here's some music. Let's do this.
Okay, if it's on the stream, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can.
Oh,
I
you know what?
play it
Actually, stop. That actually might be copywritten. Here. Oh, perfect. Here. This is what I do on the radio when I'm doing other shows. Here we go.
Adopt US Kids presents multiple choice parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her.
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge.
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend.
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Adopt US Kids presents multiple choice parenting.
You've accidentally cut your daughter's bangs unevenly. Do you A, line things up a centimeter from her hairline?
Man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man.
No. Sweatbands are so hot right now. Everyone's wearing them. Like that basketball player and that other basketball player.
B, get spiritual.
Mom, where did all the mirrors go?
A reflection could never capture our true selves.
Huh?
Beauty is within.
C, look on the bright side.
Less time blow drying, more time texting.
Or D, show empathy.
Mom, you really don't have
Ta-da! Twinsies!
I kinda love it. As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org/ND. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Dad, this is fun. I didn't think I'd like kayaking.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, but I think it's time to head back in.
Okay. Can we come back?
Sure.
Tomorrow?
Let's
Can you
stick
hear
with
me
Mom.
on this stream still?
Hey, be careful getting out of the boat.
It's a kayak, Dad.
I'm going to return the kayak. Just make sure you have everything.
Yep. Can we walk home?
How about a taxi?
Oh, yeah, you can. Totally. Awesome.
233 North Maple, please.
It's a short fare from your neighborhood to your naturehood. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a neighborhood park or green space near you. Also, find fun activities to do like boating and biking or camping and hiking, plus much more. It's all right in your naturehood.
Best day ever.
A public service announcement brought to you by the Ad Council and the U.S. Forest Service.
The following is
Best
made
day
possible
ever.
by Dad.
Why was
For
the
sure.
basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling all over it.
The dad joke. Corny, grown-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
Why do you have to be careful when it's raining cats and dogs? Because you might step in a poodle.
And kids that spend more time with their dads grow up to be smarter, more successful.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
And, with any luck, funnier adults.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he didn't have anybody to go with.
Dad jokes rule. So take a moment to make a moment and give your kid a laugh. It's as easy as going to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
That's really funny.
Keyboard Cat, Hamilton the Pug, and Toast Meets World. These are some of the internet's most beloved pets. With millions of YouTube views, shares, Instagram likes, followers,
How many
and fans across
commercials
the
do you
globe.
have?
But what do all these amazing pets have in common?
This is just like a trailing commercial.
Their stories started in a shelter. Start your story Adopt a dog or cat today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a shelter or adoptable pets near you. Training that pet to play the keyboard? Well, that's entirely up to you. Visit theshelterpetproject.org and hear more about Hamilton the Pug, Toast, and Keyboard Cat's amazing adoption stories. Start a story, adopt a shelter or rescue pet today. Your perfect pet is just a click away at theshelterpetproject.org. A public service announcement brought to you by Madison,
Now I've got
the Humane Society of the United States.
Okay, cool. As to the chat room, is what those are? Those are PSAs. That's what we play on the radio station. Anytime. Shut that off. Well, that's what we play on the radio station. Anytime we go to break or something like that. So I just happen to have them queued up on the computer. Okay, so here's the thing. If you guys listen to the stream, there's nothing new for you here because Michael and I are just going to redo you're still here with me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. If you guys are here, this is all we're doing is we're just going to repeat exactly what we did. So we're just gonna try and fix this. Well, yeah, exactly. It'll be a little different, but it'll be about the same. Here's the thing: I have notes. I practice what I say, so mine's gonna be pretty much the same. But you get the chance to do even better than you did the last time. Okay, so just to fill you in, so what we have is we have 17 minutes and 33 seconds that we have to fill. So.
Oh, I got this.
All right, cool. All right, give me 1 second. Okay, let me try this. Okay, try and talk once. Okay, cool. All right, sweet. All right. Okay, all right, you ready?
Yep.
All right, let's try this.
Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Multispeed Technologies, the show that puts you, the listener, in the driver's seat because you are the content. The phone lines are open to be a part of the program. It's a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. Give me a call. We'll have a conversation about your tech questions or business and tech questions. Linux advocate, above all else, small business owner, and now host of the only radio show centered around you, the listener. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show. My name is Noah Chalaya. So good evening to you all. Delighted to be here. Another episode of the Ask Noah Show kicking off this hour. A special edition of the Ask Noah Show kicking off this hour. Now, a couple of months ago, we did our first ever Ask Noah Show War Stories episode, and that episode was met with large success. Everyone I talked to, you guys gave your feedback. You said, we really like that episode. Everything was fantastic. We really like listening from other industry experts that are in the field that are seeing this stuff day to day. Would you do a second War Stories episode? We really liked it. And the answer, of course, was yes. We knew the first time we did it that we were going to do a second one. But the question was when. Because doing one episode a week is enough for me to try and tack on an additional episode in a given week. That was a difficult thing to do. Now, this week, we got about halfway through the week, and all of a sudden, there was a huge story that broke. And we knew right away this was going to have to be something that the Ask Noah Show had to cover. And then as the week progressed on, I started to get feedback from you guys saying, you can't wait until your day on Tuesday. In fact, the day Tuesday is even one day later than you usually are. And this story needs to be covered, needs to be talked about. and we would like to see the Ask Noah show take a proactive look. So I said, all right. So I cleared out my day on Thursday and Friday and started doing research and came together to provide you to provide you my take on this. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this week might be a good week to sell your Intel stock and buy some AMD. If you're the kind of person that likes to gamble with single stocks. From a technical perspective, if you're here for the TLDR of what happened this week, what you need to know, the answer is simply update your machine. And if you're not a special Windows user, if you can't wait, if you don't have the money to pay, then you'll have to wait until Patch Tuesday to get your machine patched. Linux, of course, is already fixed. Many of you know that if you listen to this program, you know that we here at the Ask Noah Show are going to do hours of meticulous research so that you don't have to, and then present that material to you with perfect executed analysis. And I'm going to walk you through with as much detail as necessary for you to understand what the threat is, what's being done about the threat, and what the ramifications are. And if you're not interested in all of that, then the answer is just patch your stuff and life will go on. Every computer needs an operating system to function. Now, that operating system has to be able to communicate with the hardware that it sits on. Every operating system has a kernel, and that is the brain that speaks to the hardware. And then that kernel then talks to something that we call the user land, which is the thing that you interact with. So it's the desktop, it's the processes, it's your files, etc. And the purpose behind having those two separate systems is that when you want to save a file, you don't have to tell the hard disk what sector you want to write to. You don't have to know that kind of irrelevant information. You just click the File Save button, and the user land then talks to the kernel, and the kernel then finds a place to save it on the hard disk. Now, computers use something called paging. And paging is essentially a memory allocation technique that allows the physical address of the space where the process lives to be non-contiguous. We call that physical space the frame. So the English translation of that is that a process can be allocated wherever memory is available, and then we use something called the translation look-aside buffer, which is essentially a table of all of the processes that maps their logical address to the correct physical frames. Now, in recent years, processors are constantly searching for ways to be more competitive in the form of being faster and more efficient. And one of the ways that we do that is with something called speculative execution, which is basically the processor trying to predict and solve problems before it's even called to do so. Now, if that prediction is correct, then the CPU has done its job, and the CPU is a little bit faster. If the prediction is wrong, the answer is simply deleted without any real penalty. Now, when the CPU goes to predict this data, it caches that data in a place that has no real security, no real protection. And numerous research groups have brought the fact that there is no security to Intel's attention. And the reason they brought it to Intel's attention is because it actually prioritizes speculative execution. Now, this is the fundamental feature that has been exploited by both Meltdown and Spectre, and we're going to get to what the differences of what both of those are. Meltdown, which applies to Intel only and can allow attacker to read kernel memory. Apple has commented that this flaw is has the most potential for exploitation within its ecosystem. And Spectre, which applies to both Intel, AMD, and ARM, and unlike Meltdown, applies to Intel, AMD, and ARM, but involves a pair of flaws that can allow access to a kernel memory available to an application running on a system. Now, unfortunately, Intel cannot just simply issue a software update, even a microcode update to fix this issue, because there's actually a physical problem. So they actually have to physically modify code on the device, and so there's no real fix. Now, obviously, going forward, Intel can manufacture their newest processors so that they don't have this issue, but it's just not cost-effective or realistic to expect people to take their processors out of their computer and send them back into Intel to get them patched or to get them fixed. And so the best we can do is a Band-Aid, a workaround. And I'll get to the update that is going to fix this in Windows when Microsoft actually gets around to it. But in Linux, the patch is already available. And by the way, it is basically it splits the user land and the kernel land. Now, this will work, but many of you are thinking to yourself, no, if we split user land and kernel land, doesn't that leave a performance degradation? And the truth is, I don't really have a great answer for you. The number that is being thrown around is 30%. However, I can't find a single source of where they came up with that number. Additionally, the more the story continues, and I've been following it for the past couple of days, the more I see reports that the average user won't see any noticeable performance degradation, and only high-performing computers are going to notice a difference. Now, the worst is going to be on machines prior to Haswell 4th generation that do not have PCIe. The older processors that are the more basic, those are the ones that are really going to feel the brunt of this. Newer processors, more powerful processors, specifically ones made after Haswell 4th generation with PCIe, will be less affected. Some of you are probably wondering where AMD stands in all of this. Well, AMD claims that they're not affected by this, neither AMD nor Ryzen, because because they don't engage in speculative execution with unsecured cached data. Additionally, they actually proactively implemented a feature called the kernel page table isolation feature, which should prevent this particular bug from ever affecting their systems. Now, I read one report that says that they were slightly affected, but that they could fix their small issue in software, and that you had to have some physical access to the machine to actually take advantage of the vulnerability, unlike Intel. Now, if you're on the sieve of an operating system called Microsoft Windows, they took care of their Windows insiders, but you low-level peons with your unimportant data and your unimportant privacy, you people, you can wait till we get around to it, which will be on Tuesday. The update will be KB4054022. In order to take advantage of that, you need to make sure that you have automatic updates enabled. So that is the basic rundown of what this vulnerability is, what you need to know about it, what you can do about it, which is basically just update. There's no real fix. Like I said, it's basically just band-aiding. But as we do on the Ask Noah show, we like to get industry experts, people who really understand this stuff, people who work with this stuff on a daily basis. And we are bringing in Michael Tunnell from Tux Digital. Hey, Mike, welcome to the Ask Noah show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I guess when you first saw this, when this first broke, what was your initial reaction? Was your hair on fire, or were you like, we got a patch, we'll be fine?
Well, at first I thought it'd be fine, but then I started researching more and more and starting having to like test out the patches and stuff like that because it was in the RCs at the time. When I realized how far it goes, it's definitely a jaw-dropping situation.
So, what kind of things have you tested? What kind of things have you played with?
I've played with like some JavaScript exploits and some test cases. You can actually download some test cases on some of the Project Zero announcements. Like they've published some code you can look at. There's more just proof of concept stuff. It's not like there's not like real implementations of any kind of thing. It's just like here's the code that you can run to test to see if it can detect other code from a different subset process.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I haven't. Obviously, I'm not a kernel architect. I'm not a CPU architect. So I haven't played with this stuff at that kind of level. I've just essentially been researching it, and thank God none of our customers have experienced a problem with this. Although obviously we are updating them. But one thing I thought was really cool was companies like Red Hat have really stepped up their game. They opened up their resources on access.redhat.com for the general public as it relates to this. Have you seen this?
I had not, no.
Yeah, so this is really cool. So access.redhat.com, you sign up for an account, and I'm not sure if all of the articles are available to you once you sign up for an account, or if you have to be special juju and have a Red Hat license. I've got both, so I don't really know. But the nice thing is somebody actually just tweeted them on Twitter, and we have a link to that tweet in the show notes. And this guy just said, would you be willing to open these articles up? And Red Hat said, you know what, this is important enough. Yeah, we absolutely will step up to the game. And so they opened up their entire knowledge base of stuff on this particular issue, as well as all of their resources on what you can do, what you need to know, all of that stuff. We have that linked in the show notes as well.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I'm looking at it right now. They've got there's a lot of good detail in here.
Yeah,
the diagnosis, the impact, everything.
Yeah, it's really been something interesting to follow. And you know what's also interesting is, and this we kind of saw this a little while back with the last big IT security exploit that we had. But you have you have two sides of the coin. On one hand, you have people that are like, this is extremely serious. This is as bad or worse than Heartbleed. And then you have the other people on the other side of the spectrum that are going, you know what? It's a problem. We found a fix. We have a fix. We have a patch. We'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean, it is worse than Heartbleed. That's definitely true. But it's a situation because it's a hardware specific flaw, and anyone who has the hardware that's affected, they have ultimately to fix it, they have to replace it. So it is definitely worse than Heartbleed because Heartbleed can be completely fixed in software.
Right, and the problem is because they can't actually fix it, because we're just doing this Band-Aid, 100% of the people, even if we can't agree on the actual number, the percentage, the actual measurable performance degradation, even if we can't agree on that, there's no disputing the fact that this is, everyone that is affected by this is going to have some performance hit.
Yeah, there's going to be some performance hit, but it's also a performance hit based on the type of workload that you're doing. So like there's been benchmarking based on this question, and it's mostly like really intensive cache checking and creation is what creates this issue. And so, for example, like compiling or virtualization, that has a big impact as far as the percentage. It's like that's only higher end of the percentage. But like for gaming and desktop usage, in most cases, it's almost negligible.
Yeah, so gaming and video editing, that's the two that I've seen referenced. People are saying, oh, it doesn't affect gaming, it doesn't affect video editing. But the virtualization thing, that seems huge because more and more systems are not running on Metal anymore. And if your DigitalOcean or your AWS or your OVH, I mean, that represents a huge capital cost to you that you have all of these basically every Intel processor that is affected by this.
Yeah, the virtualization issue in like the VPS area and like, you know, the cloud, that is a big impact. So I would say that in a way that you're not going to see as a desktop user a problem, but if you have a lot of cloud services, you may see a problem in that case.
Yeah, and so it's going to be interesting. I've updated most of my machines. I haven't seen a performance hit, but then again, I'm not the kind of person like all of the people that are talking about these performance hits. They're doing these theoretical models, so they're measuring like benchmarks and stuff like that. And I'm not a benchmark kind of guy. Like I install everything and then I let everything run. And if something doesn't run right or I get complaints, then I actually I act on actionable things. I don't care what numbers are. If the customer doesn't care, if the website still loads, if the server still works, to me it doesn't really matter.
I agree. It's in the sense of like just usage is not going to be that big, that impactful, especially for desktop users. It's not, and not necessarily. I mean, if you're a desktop user who also does virtualization and compiling, you'll see a problem. But like for people who are just like basic consumers. They're not going to have a problem most of the time. And if they do have a problem, the percentage is so small that you probably won't notice it. But also the 30%, like that number's thrown around a lot because...
Yeah, where did that number come from? Where did that number come from?
It came from Project Zero. When it was announced, they said this is the range of possibility of percentage affecting of 5% to 30%. So everybody just took the bigger number and ran with it.
Yeah, I want to know like how did they come up with that number? Because it like why not say like here's the actual benchmarking thing, here's what the on, here's what the off, here's what this, and how do you get a range of 5
variables? There's just so many variables.
Different processors?
There's so many different configurations. Yeah, the different processors have different effects. Like, AMD doesn't have an effect in certain cases. There's also other cases where if you have a kernel flag turned on, that it is affected. There's Intel has a massive affecting with Meltdown, so Meltdown has a bigger hit. So, for example, if your hardware is only affected by Spectre, you're not going to have anywhere near that 30% hit because it doesn't have to do the full the full solution, the full mitigation. But if you have like an Intel chip that is affected by meltdown, you will have to deal with a bigger hit more than likely because of the fact that the kernel has to do more work to compensate.
I guess that makes sense. Hey guys, if you're just joining us, we are doing our War Stories episode. We're also talking about the latest Intel security bug. So make sure to give us a call. We'll talk about your war stories. Okay, I think I got it. All right, so let me just play that back real quick and make sure that that worked. But I think we got it. Give me 1 second. Ha! Got it. Cool. Okay, that actually worked out way smoother than I thought. Okay. Thanks for doing that a second time. Are you still here? Do I have you muted? Oh, I have you muted. That's why. Thanks for doing that a second time.
Absolutely. That actually was, it kind of turned out better that time too.
I agree because we got some discussion in there.
Yeah. And I already was in the mindset of what topics I wanted to talk about. Because I was not thinking about, hey, here's the things I want to talk about. So I don't know if you saw the message in Telegram I wanted to talk about the 30% that you mentioned. So that was perfect.
Yeah. They, hold on a second. It was irritating because they had this, let's see. What did I put down a wrong button here now? I don't know what I did. Anyway. All right, that worked out. Well, cool. Well, thank you very much, Livestream, for helping. Yeah, that would actually be really great, Architect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michael. I really appreciate all your help.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
Okay, so let me see if I can do this because I want to. Okay, so let's see here. End show. See, the problem is when I do these offhand show things, there is nobody here to make sure I don't screw up. So if I don't do this right, then I'm gonna wake up to nasty Telegram messages when people realize I screwed everything up. I think it's
the beard is a fierce Telegram response.
Yeah, well, it's not his fault too. I mean, it creates a huge mess for them. If I leave the the YouTube stream going, then it continues to record and stream, so it gives everyone this message like they're live, and then it's recording reruns. It's really irritating. But I never can remember